Hi, I'm Peter Antonovich. Thank you for hiring our office to represent you on your disability claim. I wanted to give you some instructions on things you need to know as we get started here. I've been doing this work since 1982, and I've represented a lot of people, and I've learned a lot over the time. You hired us to work for you, but I'm giving you some work to do too. You see, how effective we can be in representing you is going to be determined by how strong the evidence is we can gather. And unfortunately, doctors and nurse practitioners and physical therapists, their notes don't usually reflect your symptoms and limitations to the extent that they should. That's because their focus is on diagnosing conditions and treating them. They're not focused on documenting your symptoms, your limitations, but all these things are necessary to win your disability claim. Oftentimes when I represent somebody who I know is terribly disabled, I look at the records and I know that not everything we need is there, and it's very hard to obtain that stuff. We need you to start keeping track of your symptoms and your limitations. I need you to start keeping a journal of some sort. I'm going to suggest twice a week. You enter into that journal what you've noticed in terms of your symptoms and limitations. Writing things down is very important. Writing things down makes you pay closer attention to them. Writing things down helps you put into words what you're experiencing. And this whole process is going to be about, to a great degree, your ability to put into words what you experience. So for example, if you have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, maybe you lay there in bed for an hour before you get up because of the way you feel, or you sit on the side of the bed for a long time. Some people with back conditions end up rolling out of bed onto their knees and pushing themselves up from the bed. Whatever difficulty you might have, you have to pay attention to it and you have to know it. These things become second nature over time, and then you won't even think to tell anybody about it. If you're paying attention to your symptoms, if you're paying attention to your limitations and you're writing things down, okay, you'll be better able to explain them to people. The Social Security disability process and the hearing itself is often determined by your ability to describe the limitations you have with such ordinary activities as getting dressed, taking care of your personal hygiene, fixing a small meal. You might wonder, what's that got to do with my ability to work? But the Social Security judges are looking at those things to determine if your symptoms are as severe and serious as you suggest. So you have to be able to describe symptoms and limitations with those littlest of things in your life. Little things that may have been little before, but now have become quite big. What's also very important is that after you keep this journal, the night before you have any doctor's appointment, I don't care if it's your family doctor or some specialist, you should prepare a one-page report to hand to that doctor, and on that one page you should be listing what your symptoms have been: pain, weakness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, difficulty interacting with people, anything like that. And then your limitations, okay, such as need assistance putting on my shoes, avoid going to public places because of my anxiety. Whatever your symptoms might be, whatever your medical condition might be, you need to be able to document and provide a written report to your doctor. And I say that because when people go to the doctors, they often don't go to the doctors as prepared as when they go to the grocery store. You go to the grocery store, you bring a list. You go to the doctors, people walk in with their hands in their pocket. They often, will respond to the doctor when the doctor says, "How you doing?" And they'll say, "Okay." Well, the doctor documents that you're doing okay or feeling good or feeling better, and they're not documenting anything else. And they're often not asking about what specific symptoms you have and what specific limitations you have. In fact, I think they're trained to wait to hear you tell them. So if you don't volunteer it, they don't hear it. And they're so busy that they're all too happy, unfortunately, to rush through the examination and be out the door before you had a chance to even speak. That's why bringing in a one-page written report and handing it to the doctor and saying, please make this a part of my record, is very important. A law was passed a while ago called HIPAA that requires doctors to allow you to supplement your medical record. Take advantage of it, okay? It's very necessary for the doctor to know those symptoms and know those limitations so that when I or Social Security asks them questions about your symptoms and limitations, they have some idea. All right? If your doctor doesn't know what your symptoms and limitations are, then he's not going to very well be able to express that to the people who need to hear it. And even when I have doctors who are supportive, doctors who will answer my questions for me, I get in front of a judge, and the judge looks at the doctor's report that says that you can't lift more than 5 pounds, or can't sit for more than 20 minutes at a time, or you need to avoid interaction with people you don't know. Whatever the limitation might be, the judge looks at that report and then looks at the office notes and says, well, I don't see any of that documented in the office notes, therefore this report is not supported. So I need you to make sure that that report is supported. And unfortunately, there's nobody else who can do that better than you. There's not much in this process that you're going to have control over. You can't control if I do my job right, if my staff does its job right, if the judge isn't a jerk or is biased against disabled people. You can't control if your doctors document the things you tell them or get it right. And we all have seen circumstances where the doctors don't have the simplest things correct about your history. But you can control the information that you give out. And if you fail to give out information, then the results will probably reflect your inability to communicate these things. So it takes practice. I haven't played the guitar in 5 years. If I picked up the guitar right now and tried to play you a song, it would probably sound terrible. Give me a day or two to practice, and you might recognize what I'm trying to communicate to you. It's the same thing for you. You need to practice putting your condition, your symptoms, your limitations, your experiences into words. And you need to start doing it now. As we get closer to the hearing, I'll ask you to keep that journal every day. But for now, twice a week will do. Spend 15 minutes. You don't need to be writing a book. We're not trying to publish anything. Nobody will read your notes. I'm not interested in seeing your notes. The notes are for you to learn more about yourself and your symptoms and your limitations, and to learn how to express those to your doctors and ultimately to a Social Security judge. If you help me, that will help me to help you. So you've got to do what I'm asking you to do. And I don't mean to belabor the point, but it's getting harder to win these cases nowadays. The newspapers and the TV ads, reports are all indicating that it's too easy to win Social Security cases. I've been doing this for 30 years or more, and I can tell you, lately, it's been harder than ever. And unfortunately, it's harder for the people who it shouldn't be harder for. It's harder for the people who have serious conditions and don't like to whine or complain, so therefore they're not telling everybody everything that's going on. And because of that, they're the ones who are getting left out behind. They're the ones who are being denied benefits. Don't be a person who fails to report what's happening to them. I'm not asking you to whine and complain. I'm not asking you to overstate your symptoms. I'm not asking you to make anything up. I'm asking you to report accurately to your doctors, to me, and to the Social Security judge when we get there, exactly what your symptoms are and exactly how those symptoms limit you. And you shouldn't be ashamed of your inability to do certain things or the difficulties you have in doing it, and you shouldn't be ashamed to report that, okay? But it's got to be reported in a matter-of-fact way. If you help, if you do these things, I promise you, our cases will go better and we'll have a greater chance of success. When I was last talking, I was speaking about the necessity for a disability claimant to fully inform his doctor about his symptoms and limitations. That's so very important. There's no way you can win this case. There's no way you can get good health care nowadays if you're not going to be your own best advocate. You can't assume that when you go to the doctor's going to have their full attention on you, or that they're going to be able to somehow read your mind and know exactly what symptoms you're experiencing. And it is not whining and complaining for you to report to your doctor what's going on. It's reporting. And that's what we need when we have a person applying for disability benefits. We need people to be good reporters. If you were to pick up a newspaper and you read an article about a fire that took place on Main Street, you wouldn't want the article to read like, sometime yesterday, somewhere on Main Street, a building burned and we think people were in it. It's a terrible thing, and the fire department eventually put it out. We'd want the article to read like at 7:18 p.m. yesterday on 4983 Main Street, there was a fire at a residence that had an apartment upstairs. There were 12 occupants. 10 got out without injury, 2 suffered some smoke inhalation. Nobody was seriously injured. The fire department and 3 battalions of the fire department were called to the scene. It took them 2 hours and 73 minutes. That makes no sense. 3 hours and 15 minutes to put the fire out. And there was $180,000 worth of damage. The American Red Cross is providing support to the displaced residents of the home. That's the type of article you'd want to read. You'd want to have details. Too often, people go to the doctors and they say, well, I got pain a lot. There's a lack of details. Details is what's going to win your case. Details will probably get you better health insurance. Details will get you better legal representation from me. Okay? The more details you can provide us. And there's a difference between detailed reporting and whining. Okay? Detailed reporting is when I go to get dressed, I need assistance putting on my socks and shoes. When I get out of bed in the morning, I have to lay in bed for 45 minutes or so before I can even get up because I'm adjusting to the difficulty or the pain that I'm experiencing. When I go to the grocery store, I can only stay in there 5 minutes because my anxiety level rises because of the number of people there. Whatever your medical condition is, we need details. We can't just say, oh, I can't do anything. I can never go to the store. It scares me. Those are generalized statements that don't provide much information. We need specific facts, which means we need you to be kind of like the reporter who shows up at that fire. The reporter shows up at the fire and is writing down everything that they see, everything that they hear. They're talking to people, recording what's being said. Then they go back and they write an article for the paper. Maybe it only has 10% of what they paid attention to, but they wouldn't have everything they needed if they didn't pay attention to all of it. You need to pay attention to every way in which your disability has affected the way you cook, the way you eat, the way you get dressed, the way you interact with people, the fact that you have had to give up hobbies or interests, whether you've altered the way you engage in hobbies and interests. You have to be able to explain in detail the limitations that you're experiencing. You have to be your own best advocate. Nobody else can do that for you. You can hire the best attorney in the world, and unless you're doing your job, unless you're reporting things to your doctors, unless you're doing your best to make sure the doctors are recording what you tell them, the record is going to be incomplete, the evidence isn't going to be sufficient, and we stand a chance of losing, no matter how disabled you are. I haven't done just disability work my entire career. I've been a lawyer almost 30 years now, and I was a litigator for a good portion of my career. And I was involved in, I'm going to say millions or hundreds of jury trials, but I was involved in a sufficient number to know how things work. And I also was involved in other types of litigation as well. The court system, the legal system, really isn't about truth. Okay? It's a tough lesson. Truth may be that you're disabled. Proving it's another thing. It's about perceptions. Winning in court, whether it's in a high-profile jury trial or if it's in your disability claim. Winning in court is about creating a perception, an accurate perception, but creating a perception
and having the evidence to support that perception. If we're not generating the evidence necessary to support the perception that we want to portray, then we won't succeed. So all the hard work has to start with you. You do have to do, as I indicated earlier, bring a one-page report with you every time you go to the doctor's. On that report, 2 things are listed on it. One thing is all of the ways in which your symptoms have affected you. What are these symptoms? Pain, weakness, fatigue. Pay attention to your symptoms. Don't be ashamed of your symptoms. Accept who you are and accept the limitations that you're experiencing. And the other thing is limitations. Symptoms, as I said, cause limitations. Because I have pain, I lay down for 6-7 hours a day, in addition to the time I spend trying to sleep at night. Because I have a limited range of motion, I can't bend over to pick things up off the floor, or I can't reach overhead to get a box of cereal off the top shelf, or I can't bend over to take the clothes out of the washing machine or the dryer. You need to pay attention to these things, you need to document these things, and you need to give this report to your doctors. This way, at least you'll know that you've done your part. You can't guarantee that the doctors will do their part or record those things. As I indicated, their focus is on healing people, not documenting your disability case. So they need help from you in order to document the evidence for your disability case. Their focus is in a completely different place. Their goal is to get you healed and back to work, and that's a noble goal. The problem is that in the instances where somebody can't get back to work immediately, or maybe not ever, the doctors aren't doing a hell of a good job of documenting what is keeping the person from getting there. Okay, what are the limitations this person's experiencing? Because the doctors don't want to focus on limitations, they want to focus on healing. Okay? So, once again, it is very important that you pay attention to the details. I just did a hearing where I prepared the person to testify. I told him all about how you have to say, these are the limitations that I have, and if you're asked about can you do something like can you get dressed, you say, yes, I can get dressed, but I have to have assistance putting on my socks. He had a very bad back condition. When he got to the hearing, all of his answers were, sometimes I have pain, and sometimes I lay down during the day, and I told him, don't use expressions like sometimes. And if you do, be prepared to explain them. His testimony was not particularly good because he refused to give details. I think he was nervous, which is understandable. He was self-conscious, which is also understandable. One of the reasons why I want you to keep notes, one of the reasons why I want you to write a journal of sorts, is so that you're more comfortable talking about these details, so that you won't be so nervous at the hearing. And I asked the individual after the hearing, I think we'll win the case anyway, but I asked him after the hearing if he'd been taking the notes I'd asked him to take, and he indicated he had not. Right? If he had been twice a week, 3 times a week, taking 15, 20 minutes to write things down specifically regarding symptoms and limitations, his testimony would have gotten better. But he wasn't in practice talking in details, and therefore he didn't give us details at the hearing because it wasn't customary for him. So practice, practice, practice. Practice putting into words what you're experiencing so that when you have to do it, you can do it. Now there's something else I think we need to talk about. It's part of my role as your attorney in an effort to help you fully inform your doctors. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I run into so many people whose, because of their disabilities, their self-esteem has been so damaged that they feel they're wasting the doctor's time when they talk to them. They feel like they are wasting everybody's time, which is an awful place to be. Many of my clients, most of my clients, hardworking people, supported their families, supported themselves, worked hard all their lives, did the best they could to provide a lifestyle for themselves and those they care about. And then as a result of medical conditions that are outside of their control, they're no longer able to do that. And the sense of identity, the sense of self, the understanding who you are, that takes a big hit. And sometimes I think some people feel they'd just rather crawl in a hole than to make a spectacle of themselves. I would never ask you to make a spectacle of yourself, but I also don't want you to disappear. The world is very cold and impersonal. And when you go to see your doctor, he's got 50 people he's seeing that day. And you could disappear very easily. And he wouldn't notice. He'd just move on to the next person. And what you need to do is make sure that you understand that you are important enough. That you should not disappear. That you need to be seen, you need to be heard, and you need to get quality health care. And you need your doctors to record what's going on with you in order for you to get quality health care. It's not just the Social Security Administration. Insurance companies, when they deny tests because the doctors don't document all the reasons why you need tests, and then your health care suffers. You have to make sure that you are advocating for yourself. And before you can do that, you have to make sure that you accept that you're worth it, that you're good enough, that you're important, that you shouldn't just disappear from this earth because you're no longer able to work or contribute in the way that you used to. You're going through a phase here, whether you have a temporary disability that only lasts a year or so, or if you have a disability that may go on for many years or even the remainder of your life. You're going through a period here where you're redefining who you are. It's not a comfortable period to be in. It's not an easy job to redefine yourself. And on top of you having to go through all this redefining who you are in this world and what you can do, you have to worry about making sure your doctors document things and that your lawyer's doing a good job and that the Social Security Administration somehow accepts and understands the difficulties you're experiencing. Unfortunately, it does all start with you. You have to fight for yourself. And if you don't, you will get less than the premium quality service either from your doctors, from me, or from the Social Security Administration, because there's only so much we can do without the right information. So part of what you have to do, part of what I'm encouraging you to do, is to work on your sense of self, work on your ability to accept the limitations and symptoms that you have, and work on your understanding that you reporting those symptoms and limitations is important. It's important for you, and it's important for other people out there who are experiencing similar things who also aren't reporting everything to their doctors. If the more information doctors have, the more information that they can use to understand the depths of the conditions that you have and perhaps find better ways to approach it, or at least give you more attentive care. And likewise, the more information I have, the better able I'm going to be to fight your case before the Social Security Administration. And ultimately, the more information Social Security has, the more likely it is that they're going to award your case and approve you for benefits. Again, nobody's saying it has to be a long-term thing. In order to qualify for Social Security disability benefits or for SSI, you have to have a medical condition that disables you for at least 12 months. So it can be a short-term thing, but 12 months is a long time when you're used to functioning at full speed, and now you're not able to do the things you used to do, and you're not able to contribute the way you think you should contribute. And going through that has an impact on your ability to communicate things. And you have to get focused. You have to pay attention to details. Nobody's going to ask you to whine. Nobody's going to ask you to complain. Nobody's going to ask you to indicate that you can't do anything. Of course you can do things. You have to explain the limitations you have in doing things. Of course you can dress yourself. But if you have difficulty doing it, if you need assistance in any way. Or if you have a depressive condition where, of course, you can dress yourself, but you might go 4 or 5 days of the week where you don't, because you just don't have the energy, the drive. These things need to be communicated. They need to be communicated to your doctors, they need to be communicated to me, they need to be communicated to the Social Security Administration. Understand, the Social Security Administration will not take your word for it. They need to see your doctor confirming what it is that you're talking about. They need the doctor to confirm your symptoms. They need the doctor to confirm your limitations. And without a doctor confirming it, we won't get very far. So, you are worth it. You are important. And you should pay close attention to yourself. Don't let your life slip away because you aren't who you used to be. Nobody's who they used to be. I'm not who I used to be. I'm not trying to give a self-help lecture here, but it is the number one reason why my clients don't have complete medical records is because they don't report things to their doctors. And the number one reason why they don't is because they don't want to waste anybody's time. They think they're a bother, and you're not.